At 0318 local time, 110 nautical miles east of the Strait of Hormuz, a P-8A Poseidon from VP-47 Golden Swordsman was flying patient circles in the dark. The crew had been airborne for 6 hours, on their fourth coffee, staring at acoustic processors painting the same unremarkable picture for most of the watch anchor chains, under tension, bilge pump noise, the low-frequency moan of generator sets on ships that hadn't moved in 26 days. The Strait of Hormuz was closed. Had been since day 2 of Operation Epic Fury. The IRGC had spent months pre-positioning EM-52 bottom-rising mines across both transit lanes. And the U.S. Navy had spent 3 weeks cataloging how thorough that job had been. There were 2,140 vessels anchored in the Gulf of Oman approaches, or trapped inside the Gulf itself, VLCCs, LNG carriers, container ships, all sitting on reserves with nowhere to go, while a quarter of the world's daily oil supply quietly stopped moving. MCM Task Group 52.1 was already working the southern strait, dragging neutralization sleds across a seabed that Iran had turned into the world's most expensive minefield. Slow, meticulous work. Weeks of it. Nobody was asking the Kilo to slow down. The Iron Yunus was a Type 877 EKM Kilo-class diesel-electric submarine. Western analysts call the Kilo the black hole submarine, not because NATO was being poetic, but because at depth and near zero speed on battery, her acoustic signature is genuinely indistinguishable from ambient ocean noise. She is, in the most literal mechanical sense, a hole in the water that happens to be carrying weapons. Tonight she was carrying EM-52 bottom-rising mines. Each one drops to the seabed, anchors in the sediment, and waits. The fusing system listens for the acoustic and magnetic signature of a large vessel passing overhead. When the signatures match, the mine ejects a rising homing torpedo upward at 50 knots. No radar warning for a weapon that emits nothing. The EM-52 is Iran's answer to how a navy with no surface fleet competes with the United States in deep water. You don't fight the carrier. You mine the corridor the carrier's fuel ships use to reach it. The Yunus was loaded with 8 of them. She had been sitting on the bottom in 175 meters of water for 18 hours, parked beneath the keel of the Bahri Yanbu, a Saudi VLCC, anchored 14 miles east of the strait entrance, one of roughly 60 supertankers sitting in a loose cluster across the outer approach corridor. Each tanker threw off anchor chain stress noise, generator hum, the low-frequency groan of steel flexing in a seaway. Acoustic cover the Yunus captain had been specifically briefed to exploit. The briefing had come from Russian sources. The IRGC had been receiving signals intelligence from a Russian maritime reconnaissance satellite cataloging the P-8 patrol boxes that VP-47 and VP-40 flew on rotating schedules. The pattern was never perfectly predictable, but it was predictable enough. The Yunus captain knew the coverage gap opened around 0315. He had been waiting for it for 2 days. He used it at 0311. The Yunus went to creep speed on battery barely 2 knots, tucked so close under the Bahri Yanbu's keel that her sail clearance was under 30 meters. The radar equivalent of crossing a room by staying directly behind someone big enough to block the view. Back in the P-8, the Senso was staring at his display when the pattern changed, not a contact. An absence. One sonobuoy in the active field went from routine ambient noise to something very slightly off frequency for 3 seconds, then normalized. He could talk himself out of it. He did not talk himself out of it. Narrowband tonal at 49.7 Hz. Electric motor frequency, consistent with the Kilo's main propulsion at minimal power. 11 seconds, then gone. 11 seconds was enough to stop being a patrol and start being a hunt. While the P-8 crew worked the problem from above the thermocline, the USS Connecticut was solving it from below. A Seawolf-class fast attack submarine threading the outer edges of the tanker cluster at 240 feet, her TB-29A towed array painting a faint bearing toward the Bahri Yanbu cluster for the past 30 minutes. At 0323, the fire control party had accumulated enough bearing history to push an estimate to the P-8 via secure UHF relay. The P-8 crew crossed it with their own bearing from the active field. The intersection put the contact 200 meters off the Bahri Yanbu's port quarter. Not under it, past it, moving. The Yunus had begun her mine deployment run. At 0326, 7 fast attack craft departed Abu Musa Island at 40 knots, heading northeast toward the tanker cluster. Rules of engagement required the P-8 to respond. Option 1. Swing northwest, cover the surface contacts, pull the only active airborne sensor off the kilo. Option 2. Stay over the kilo and let 7 IRGC speedboats with potentially enough explosive in their bows to sink a container ship operate unobserved. The P-8 commander made the call and rolled northwest. The IRGC fast boats had his attention for 8 minutes. The Yunus captain had planned for exactly 8 minutes. The moment the P-8's orbit changed, the kilo surged from 2 knots to 6. 7 fast attack boats at full throttle spiked the sonobuoy noise floor by 12 decibels. Finding a kilo against a 1-2 decibel noise spike is like trying to hear someone breathing in a room where someone just fired a starting pistol. When the IRGC boats peeled off without ever approaching anyone and returned to Abu Musa, they had never intended to reach anyone. They were the opening act. The kilo had laid 4 mines in the gap. At 0334, the P-8 went active. 2 die-cast sonobuoys dropped 800 meters apart, both pinging simultaneously at medium frequency. The Yunus heard it. She launched 2 Russian acoustic decoys, noisemakers mimicking the host submarine's propulsion signature, then went to maximum battery sprint at 14 knots, south-southeast, cavitating, loud, pushing toward open water. The P-8's display showed 3 contacts simultaneously, 2 decoys diverging northeast and southeast. The real kilo somewhere among them. The processor needed 22 seconds. The Senso had 2 Mk-54 lightweight torpedoes in the weapons bay. The problem was which contact to shoot. The northeast decoy was the easier shot geometrically. It was also a floating noisemaker with no magnetic signature. Sending a torpedo into the wrong contact meant the Yunus laid her last 2 mines and went deep for 36 hours. The Mk-54 has an active seeker. The seeker doesn't ask submarines for paperwork. It finds them by return strength. In that cluster, firing on a decoy was expensive and fatal to the mission. The Connecticut resolved it in 11 seconds. Her magnetic anomaly detection array read Earth's magnetic field distortion caused by large ferrous mass moving through water. The decoys generated no magnetic signature. The southern contact was steel, moving at 14 knots, 295 meters deep. The ship class library matched kilo, weapons free. The P-8 rolled onto attack heading. 2 Mk-54s dropped from the weapons bay on a 2-second interval, parachutes opening, then collapsing on entry. Seeker arm. Active search. The Yunus was out of decoys. The first Mk-54 acquired the sprint noise on active and locked. A kilo cavitating at full sprint is not a quiet target. The torpedo closed at 40 knots on a target doing 14, which made the geometry about as fair as a foot race between a sports car and a bicycle. The first detonated 3 meters below the keel, not a hull hit. A pressure pulse, 328 pounds of explosive in seawater, generating an overpressure wave that moves faster than sound travels in steel. The Yunus's pressure hull cracked between frames 23 and 27. Flooding started in the machinery compartment. The boat lost depth control and began rising uncontrolled, emergency blow activating automatically. 3,000 tons of submarine heading for the surface, whether the captain approved or not. The second Mk-54 tracked her upward on passive and detonated against the starboard ballast tank as she rolled. The kilo was on the surface for 47 seconds. The Connecticut finished it. 2 Mark 48 ADCAPs, running shallow, converging on a target that was no longer maneuvering. The blast was visible on the P-8's infrared camera, a white bloom on the dark water, there and then not there, leaving oil and debris scattered across a quarter-mile of the Gulf of Oman. The Iran Yunus was the last kilo-class submarine in Iranian operational service. She was also no longer the main problem. The Senso ran the mine drop timing against the Connecticut's track reconstruction. 6 position estimates on the display. The UNES had finished her mission before she died. 6 EM-52 bottom-rising mines were on the seabed of the approach corridor, spread across 11 nautical miles of deep water directly beneath the stranded tanker cluster. MCM Task Group 52.1 was working the strait. The Gulf of Oman approach was not in their lane. The 2,140 ships were not moving tonight. South of Bandar Abbas, the question nobody in the P-8 or the Connecticut was saying out loud was whether the Iran Fateh, Iran's domestically built midget submarine, unaccounted for since day 3, was waiting for the same gap the UNES had used. Smaller hull, less acoustic signature, a different patrol rotation to learn. The Sonobois field was reset. The processors kept listening. If you enjoyed this video, watch our breakdown of the U.S. Navy's mine-clearing operation to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Bye for now.